And good evening, and welcome to another evening, fun evening so far, in the Teacher's Room. And with ITDI, the International Teacher Development Institute, our special guest is Catherine Oki. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Yay.
All right.
And we've got a few new faces in here, like to welcome. Hey, Anne's here. Good to see Anne. Hey. Anne's not a new face. Anne's one of our older faces in terms of longevity. We're very happy to have you all the time. You inspire us to keep going, Anne. And we do have a new face. Simon Stevens is with us for the first night.
All right.
Andrew Boone just went incognito, so that's okay. Anyway, we're here to have a little interview with Catherine to get to know her. We're looking at teaching beliefs and beliefs about learning. And it's pretty much a free-for-all, except I'm going to lead with a bunch of prepared questions. And then everybody else feel free to join in either with the text chat over on the side or just by jumping in with your voice. As I said earlier, if I start picking up any big background noise, I may go ahead and mute you, but you're welcome to unmute yourself. Catherine.
Yes.
Well, I know you pretty well, having worked with you for a few years as an adult, but I'm pretty curious to know, what were you like as a child?
According to my family, and perhaps somewhat my memory, I was like the kid where if you gave me something, like I wanted to figure out what it was, and if you put your hand in to try and help me, I was like, get out of here, like I'm gonna figure this out. So there's a lot of stories of that when I was a kid, but and then I've seen that in other children that have been born into our family, so I think there's a genetic thing happening with that.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have 4 older brothers, which explains a lot, I think. Thank you. Yeah, so I think...
So it sounds like you're saying you were curious and fiercely independent.
Yeah, I think those are 2 good adjectives to describe me as a kid. I don't know, I liked singing songs. I was making up songs all the time. I probably talked a lot. Yeah, I loved playing outside and running around and
okay. How about as a like elementary school student, high school student? Tell us a little bit about that, Catherine.
Elementary school, you know, I was labeled as dyslexic, and I had private tutors for many years, actually through junior high school, I think. My brothers are much older than I am, so they came into a world that wasn't aware of learning differences. They just called them stupid. And so my parents, because I came along later, they had more knowledge at their disposal. So they got me tested for things. And simultaneously, one of my brothers was going off to college at Landmark in Vermont, which is for dyslexic students. So I had a lot of early intervention, and it didn't really hinder me. I was, you know, honor society and stuff in high school. I was in theater and dance, doing musicals. I did cheerleading for quite a long time. I was captain of the cheerleading squad in high school. I don't know, I ran cross country for a year, played field hockey for a year. I just like to try different things. I guess that curiosity, I really like trying things.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any sense of being a teacher when you were young? Did you teach your friends stuff, or was that?
Well, I started volunteering when I was 12 at a school that did inclusion at the time. They had kids that had different disabilities. You know, I think they were at that time, I think it was like the typical kids and the atypical kids, or I can't remember what the terminology was exactly at that time, but so there were kids with physical delays, born with, you know, atypical chromosomal patterns. kids who came from some rough backgrounds, and they were all just in this summer program together. So I started doing that when I was 12 and did that a couple weeks a year until the time that I was 18. And yeah, I always liked it. I mean, I kept going back. So
you ever have as a little kid or did you ever have an idea of something you wanted to be when you grew up?
well, my dad was a doctor, so I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I went to high school and chemistry. That dashed all my medical dreams. Also, I think hospitals are just gross. Sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was sort of my first dream. And then after that, yeah, I just went to university thinking like, well, what's this going to be about? And I was pretty attracted to liberal arts and went for anthropology because it made the world make some semblance of sense.
Yeah, cool. And how did you end up in Japan?
Studied abroad for 7 months. Yeah, so I came as a student.
Wait. How did you possibly conceive of, where were you, in Virginia, or where were you?
Yeah, Virginia. I read a book about Japan, and I thought, oh, that place sounds interesting. It was the book that Ruth Benedict wrote during World War II,
Mm-hmm.
The Chrysanthemum and the Sword. And it, just had sort of Gammon and Gambadu and
Mm-hmm.
Moriarty and these ideas. And I thought, oh, those sound great. These are my kind of people. I felt like some, I don't know, kinship or something. So yeah, my dad said, you want to study abroad, you have to make a plan. So I looked back in the days, back in the day when they had books with programs listed, and I found 2 programs that I liked, and I weighed the pros and cons, and I went to my dad and I said, well, here are the 2 programs, and this is this, and this is that, and this is the one I really want to go to. And he was like, what he did, he would always do this, he'd go, and then he said, okay. And so
That's cool.
My adventure.
So
Yeah.
You're in Japan for 7 months, and did anybody ask you to teach English while you were there for 7 months?
Well, I met these 2 guys that were on the JET program, and so they were like, yeah, it's good fun. And so I applied for it while I was actually here as a student. And I went home and I applied for grad school as well in the anthropology of Japan to study in England. And then I had a panic attack because I hadn't heard from either of them. And I was like, I've been a student for 20 years. What's happening to my life now? I called my brother, told him I was quitting school a week before graduation and wasn't going to speak to my parents. And he calmed me down. And then I finished my paper. I graduated and I got both offers. And I decided to come as a JET to improve my Japanese and get some more experience over here. And the program in England said, yeah, take your time. And then I never went because I decided I really liked teaching. And so I went back eventually for an MA in teaching, but not in anthropology.
Cool. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you about, you're in a pinch. You got to go teach a group of students. Your partner, Phil Brown, is suddenly sick. And you got to go into anything, a speaking, a listening, a reading, writing class. And what are a couple of activities that you can like pull out of nowhere and sort of your go-to activities? And we do this question because we often have some new teachers who watch the video on YouTube later on, and we just like to have a sense of what are some of your good old dependable activities.
So are we talking about young learners?
And you were telling us what you would use.
I guess recently what I do, so I'm at a university now. So if that were to happen and I was told to go teach a bunch of students, I think I would throw out kind of easy questions because I'd want to know what their general level was first. So just some easy questions, see how long they could talk for. And then, get them in pairs, see how they do. things like, what's your favorite season? Or where would you like to go in the world? Where would you like to visit? Something that, most of us can come up with a pretty easy answer to. Yeah, I've been recently using sort of TED Talks in classes. So if the students...
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your students, sort of what their level is and stuff, so we can kind of contextualize whether other people want to use TED Talks with their students.
Gotcha. Okay, so all of our students study abroad for a full academic year from their second semester of second year until until the summer of their third year.
Yeah.
And so we gauge by TOEFL, and I think the average, well, it has declined a bit, but it's usually in the high 50s, low 60s, somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And they come in at varied levels. I mean, we've got some who are up in the 70s who get up into the 80s or 90s, and we have some who can barely scratch a 45. And that's after like a year, or a full 2 semesters with us. So there's a real range of level.
Yeah.
But I think it doesn't really matter necessarily what their level is. I think what's important is that first of all, they understand. So if you're using a TED Talk, for example, what's the discourse? So just getting them to look through, for example, if they're very low level, let's look through the transcript and just identify words words you don't know. So just get a grapple with the language. And then, because our job is to help them hone their academic skills, which, sort of the first, well, I don't know if it's the first step, but one of the major steps is getting them to be able to identify what's the topic, what's the main idea, and what are the supporting points. Mm-hmm. So having them listen for those things would be the next step if they're very low level. If they're higher level, I think you can start in having them listen first, and then go in and having, seeing what they catch, then having them look at transcripts after that. So I think it depends on what the level is. That would somewhat determine the approach that I took with, for example, using a TED Talk.
And do you think this is a group that I described it as a group you didn't really know. Do you think you have a ability to pick out those levels pretty quickly, or does that challenge for you?
Well, I think if you give them something where you're asking them to talk to each other about an easy topic, well, you're going to hear pretty quickly what they can produce.
Yeah.
And if you're hearing, a bunch of people saying, "Oh, well, my favorite season is da 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 da," and there's not that many ums and ahs. Okay, they've got some ability to produce and to understand.
Yeah.
Whereas if they're going like, then they're
yep.
Yeah, I might not do TED with them actually.
So Phil had a question earlier that I missed because I didn't have my glasses on, and it's just moving back. Well, go ahead, Phil, with it. It's going back to the influences. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Kat, you're talking about your childhood experiences, and I was just wondering, how do they influence your teaching now, or you as a teacher now?
Just to mess with your brain a little bit here, we're going to throw hard questions at you from now on.
That's fine. Well, because I wasn't, like, I was taken out of the classroom for like extra help. I did phonics, actually. I was taken up to the big school, as we called it, with another kid, and we did phonics. And we weren't tracked, like we weren't put into different level classes. We were in the same classroom. It's just for that reading time, we were put into a separate classroom. Because it was clear that our thinking, we just had a different need. We had a different level of need for that, but we weren't stupid. It's not that we couldn't participate in the rest of the class.
Sure.
So I think that informs me to a point, because, knowing that students aren't stupid, they just might have different needs.
Right.
And you might have to offer that opportunity to have maybe this kind of separate moment with them. In general, the teachers that I had were really kind. I had one teacher who was a real beep. And so I think that I've always tried to just be kind to students as well, because that left a real scar. I mean, I have very, it's kind of almost visceral still. Like, I can, conjure the feelings when I think about her, Miss Drury. Just her name. So I think actually I tend to kind of like even the slower students, not
Sure.
more, but they have a special place in my heart.
Right, you have a soft spot for them, I guess.
And when I taught the young learners, the ones that were, difficult or weird, I liked them a lot, because there was something in their brain that was different, but they always had a thing. They always had a spark. So, so I was kind of that kid that would say random stuff sometimes in class, and the teacher would be like, "What?" But I just would zone out sometimes, and that's how my brain worked. And I think I still do that sometimes.
Fair play.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah. So, in line with some of those, how things influenced you, what about how long have you been teaching in Japan now?
I came back to teach on the JET program in 2000. Yeah, in 2000. So I've been teaching, for 19 years, I guess.
This is that you're lucky it was 2000. That's a pretty easy calculation.
Miss Rory was my math teacher.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So over those 18, 19 years, who are some of the teachers who have influenced you?
Well, when I was on the JET program, that was a lot of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. There wasn't much teacher training or anything like that. So I don't think I really met teachers who strongly influenced me until I was older.
Yeah.
Or I was several years into my teaching. But I started going to the Pearson Longman Kids Store at the time, because I was branching into teaching young learners. And there was one sensei, Ota sensei. She did she's based in Tokyo, I think, and she was reading stories. And the way that she read stories, I loved it so much. It was so theatrical and it was expressive. And I thought, I want to be like her. I think I already read stories a lot like her, but I definitely felt I
wonder if you felt like it was okay to read stories like her. Because
I think I already did, but it just made me feel like maybe I wasn't weird. I don't know. I really got into storytelling, and even storytelling to adults. I mean, before I had my daughter, I was involved in an adult storytelling group even. So, and then Alida Krauss was a big influence. Mari Nakamura was a big influence.
Sorry, give us both Alida and Mari are real pros.
Yeah.
What do you think of when you think of Alida or Mari?
Alida was really creative at making games. She would see some Japanese TV show, some game, and she'd adapt it to English learning games.
Yeah, and that's so clever, hey, because the learners all know the context and everything.
You don't have to
She's
explain
just
it.
added a dimension to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant,
So
brilliant.
I always thought that was great. Maudie just is such a teacher from the heart.
Yeah.
And I loved how like tickled she'd get about just reading a simple story. You know, I've never actually thought about this, but yeah. And you know, she always offered great activity ideas as well, which I would take back to my classroom and try out immediately. So yeah, they were big influences for me. But you know, the biggest teacher influence, or one of the biggest teacher influencers, I suppose, was actually, and this is more for now that I'm not teaching young learners, but I'm teaching university students, was a religion teacher I had in university. And literally, since I took her class in my 4th year of university, after I came back from study abroad, it was like a 101 class, religion 101. I just needed to fulfill a requirement. And her name was Geeta, and she would put us into groups, small groups, and have us discuss things. And then she would one of us would be the secretary, and we would stay in that group for a few weeks, so we'd each have a turn to be secretary. And then she'd open it up, and we would, you know, discuss as a class. And I literally waited 18 years until I got a class, the reading and discussion class at Doshisha Women's, where I do that, because it is so incredibly effective. When you have students who are at a level where they can discuss, and you're giving them material that is at their level or close enough to their level and their experience, that you can give them questions and they can just get on with it. And then you give them a chance, because it's, you know, it's not first language, it is second language still for them, that you give them a chance to practice what they're going to report, and then they get to report. But the students actually, I mean, someone will report what the group talked about, but then people will just randomly comment. And so for literally 18 years, I held on to that, and then finally got to try it, and it's been great. So
what did she do? Yeah, Geeta, was it Geeta?
Geeta Buell. Yeah, she was, you know, I've tried to find her actually.
No, I'm saying, what did she do during those lessons? How much facilitating, or what was her role?
Walk around, listen a bit. You know, she wasn't like, she might make a comment or ask a question, but she wasn't like in our faces. She never told anybody they were wrong. And it was a religion class in Virginia. And there were a fair amount of us who were not religious, but I mean, there were people that were, you know, they wore crosses.
Wow.
And not as just fashion. So, you know, there was definitely some differing opinions, but she made sure, you know, that it was kept amicable, and everybody was, you know, very reasonable. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, so that has been a huge influence on my teaching as well, is her approach to discussion. And yeah, I love that class.
And I think I watched the influence Maria had on you.
Oh, that's a point. I think Maria's yeah, she's definitely had an influence on me in terms of remembering to look at things from different viewpoints.
Yep.
From asking questions. I mean, I think all of the teachers in our department, I mean, you absolutely, God, my first year of teaching at the university level, I was in your office every day, Stephen. So, you know, lest I forget you, you know, absolutely. I was in there going like, is this a good idea? And you were like, yeah, go try it.
I was going to put a name on that chair. Just put your own like little director's chair. So, Catherine, always welcome.
Yeah, but you were great, because you'd say, well, go try it and come back and report. I'd go, and sometimes
I was showing you the depth of my knowledge in that way.
No, you gave me some, here, just go do that. Go try that.
I had no idea if it would work.
You know, or I'd come to you with an idea, and I'd be like, is this good? And you'd be like, is it? I don't know. So, but I think, you know, there's there's a point where you start to trust yourself a little bit more as a teacher. You trust
I was just going to say that that's what it was all about, is you were feeling me out trust-wise, and I was giving you trust, and
you were giving me just enough
I
rope
believed
to hang
in you.
myself.
Yeah, I believed in you a lot. So I mean, that's what it's all about in the classroom, I guess.
But I think, like, yeah, you learn to trust your instinct. You start to build some instincts.
Yeah.
And then you start to rely on that instinct.
How was that first year and second year? You're in your third year there now, is it? Or fourth year?
Fourth year, yeah.
Oh my God, your fourth year. So
a lot. I mean, the first year was just insane because
a blur.
There were 12 classes in the spring, and it was like,
yeah.
And then
how was the learning curve, do you think, for you?
You know, I had never really taught anything besides like a little bit of Eikaiwa. Well, that's not true. I mean, the high school, when I taught at the high school, by my third year of the high school, I had some idea of what was going on. But then I took quite a long break from teaching teenagers. So the learning curve, it was a lot of relearning in that sense, but also relearning like what it was to, you know, remembering back to my MA where I had to like, you know, write a paper. I hadn't written a paper in a while. I had been writing materials.
Yeah, me too.
Recording songs and stuff. I hadn't really been writing academically. So it was sort of a refresher course for me. I was sort of learning with the students, you know, but I've always thought that teaching is learning. You know, you learn, I always feel like I've learned far more from the students than they do from me. So, yeah, it was a steep curve that year. Second year was better. Third year was pretty chill. But third year is when I got the reading and discussion course and got to have more content. So that was exciting and a good and timely challenge, I would say.
So you just segued into the next part of the interview, which is about teaching and learning. And you just answered that teaching is learning and learning is teaching and stuff. But I want to kind of drill down into that a little bit further. And you get to choose whether we start with teaching or start with learning. Which one do you want to go with?
God, it's like truth or dare.
It is. 17 questions with one of them, and there's only 2 questions with the other.
What? Let's start with learning.
Okay. What are some of your teacher beliefs about learning? It's taken me years to figure out what I think about how people learn, but once people are forced to say a few things, we get to kind of zone in on where they're coming from. Okay. So I want to know what you think about how people learn, whether it be a language or contents or a skill, or where does it start with you?
I think that people have to see the point.
You got one groan for that. That was good.
Of learning whatever it is that they're, you know, set to, and this is whether it's informal education or formal education.
They got to know why they're learning it.
Yeah, because I think we learn things when we're ready to learn things, if that makes sense. Like I think
totally
that when we really want to learn something, we're going to learn it, and it like I am not a math person, but I'm taking doing a quantitative methods project right now because I really want to learn about it, and it's not easy, but I want to. And so I think you have to see the point of what you're learning. And if you see the point of what you're learning, then I think I don't know, motivation is such a big word, but perhaps your motivation or your ability to focus on the task at hand or the tasks at hand or the job at hand goes up significantly.
Yeah, now you're just describing a little bit about the struggle. You know, you're weak at math, but you really want to make an effort to get it for some other purpose in your life or anything. But one of our old colleagues on the Japanese side, his key word about learning is all about the students must struggle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk about where does that fit in?
If you're going to make them struggle, then you have to have a good support there for them. I think that allowing a student to just struggle on their own is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because that's going to lead to, I think, giving up, and no learning is going to take place.
Yeah. I just read about how the Western approach to education is bring the brightest kids up in the class to do the math problems on the front board. And in Japan, the teacher often brings the weakest students up to the board and supports them through the struggle, you know, I guess betting that they'll get through it to the end. And it's always interesting how the Japanese, the longer I'm here, it reinforces it's not good or bad, it's just different.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, is struggle okay? Maybe a little bit, but I think
supported struggle. Yeah.
Struggle, yeah.
Okay, you got to pick your brain here. Give us another one. So you said, you know why you're doing something leads to some kind of effort or intrinsic motivation. What else is key in people, your students? Think of your students learning stuff. What do they need from you?
I think there has to be connections made between what they're perhaps learning and other subjects or their experiences or whatever. I think it has to apply to something that's already somewhere in there. And I mean, you know, like the barrel of monkeys kind of thing. You know, we know that learning happens as you sort of connect new information to old information. So, and I think review, we know, you know, you have to review things and you have to hear things several times often before you know, they go really deep into your memory. So I think either knowing what they're doing in other classes, be it, you know, hopefully through communication with the other teachers, or, you know, asking them what they're learning in other classes. It's important to have an idea of what they're doing so that you can reinforce.
Contextualize to a degree.
Contextualize and reinforce, you know, similar messages. And then, you know, kind of encourage them making connections. So, yeah.
Okay, let's move over to the teaching side. And I want to start with the first of my 23 questions, which is, how would your students describe you? If, you know, what do they say when they talk about Catherine, the teacher?
I think the first thing is my smile makes them happy and they feel cheered up, is what I often get on those little boards.
Yeah.
I've gotten like Kyasarin wa ichiban akogareru, like I look up to. Yeah, I look up to you. I've gotten that a few times. I had a student who, it was interesting, it just came up as a memory from a year ago. I taught her as a child when she was like 5. And then she ended up being one of our students. She's now off studying abroad. But she just, you know, she said she remembered me. And when she realized that I was that same teacher, that, you know, she said, you were one of my first teachers and you left such an impression on me. And I don't know. I mean, I like to think my students think I'm fair but firm, but I don't know. I mean,
so that's where I'm going. So what do you, when you walk into the classroom at the beginning of the year with one of your new, now college age first year students, what are some of the things you want to establish in your relationship with them as building your own little learning community? Think back to some of the classes where it's been really easy and they've all bought into what what you're pitching versus, a class that it's been more of a struggle. But what are, in terms of your teaching approaches, is what I'm getting at.
Well, I think being clear with your expectation is important. And I don't think I've always been that, to be fair. I think, when I first walked into the job, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing either. But we're going to figure this out together. But now that, I know what I'm doing more. I think that just having clear expectations, you can tell a university student, this is what you need to do. And I think I expect them to show up. I expect them to, participate. I expect that sometimes they're going to have an off day, and that's okay. But I'll, if they're falling asleep, I tell them to stand up and jump up and down. I do expect them to be present. I guess that idea of struggle with support, like I try to encourage them to stay in English, but I give them, a lot of classroom English and discussion English, and I keep my ear to the ground to make sure they're staying on point. What was the question?
When you walk in at the beginning of the year, you're trying to establish some impressions or feelings or routines or
right. Yeah, and I'm big on homework. Like, I think if you do your homework, then you can participate more effectively. If you don't do your homework, because the homework is going to prepare you for the discussion, or it's going to prepare you for, what we're doing.
Which is a key point, because there's a wide range of homework, from make work projects to, I guess I agree with you there that the only homework I give people is basically preparing. You get to see this before I'm using it, because I like you and I'm trying to give you a chance to prep yourself.
Yeah.
Versus this is a worksheet or a drill sheet that's just meant to kill another tree.
Yeah, no. I do like this year I've tried and I have tried it in the past, but this year it's actually working, vocabulary notebooks. I think being consistent, I think that's part of it too, is just being consistent about your expectations. And certainly, you might have hit a wall with some students and say, okay, this is not working and you need to change tact. But I think if you know what their goals are, and you have an idea of how they can help themselves get there, and you can help them get there, then you can create homework that's meaningful. And not just busy work or, for the sake of homework. So, so I do expect students to do homework. But if they have an off week, okay, they have an off week. That happens too.
Sure. Now, you're teaching both skills classes in preparation for the going abroad, and you're teaching some content as well.
Yeah.
Just briefly, do you have any favorite of the 4 skills in terms of teaching? And if not, that's okay.
I do enjoy, actually, and this is crazy because it's a lot of marking, but I do enjoy teaching writing. Because when you have a student who writes a really nice essay, there's a real satisfaction. It's enjoyable. You're like, oh yeah, and there's usually only a couple in a class that will get there. But I do enjoy teaching writing. I think also the nice thing, about teaching writing in the way that we've done it for like TOEFL or for compare and contrast or things like that. There's a pattern, but within that pattern, they can then express themselves and apply.
That's it. That's the answer, is that it's just joyful to see young people express themselves and get to know them. That's to me the best thing about writing. I get to know those students much more than any other students.
Yeah. So I do like writing classes.
So I was gonna ask you on top of that. I'm running out of time here with the last few, but I wanted to ask you on the content side. What are you interested in teaching, content-wise?
So I'm doing sociology, and I'm doing education right now. So I've kind of gone back to my roots of sociology, anthropology, and then brought in my, love of education. And I'm having a great time doing that. And it's something that students, our students anyway, seem to be sinking their teeth into a bit, because they've all been involved in education for 20 odd years. And sociology, they've all lived abroad. And so then they come back and they're like, oh yeah, right. Okay. So there are these differences, and they have some world knowledge that they can then apply. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. So you said I'm a researcher on sociology of education. I'm a budding. I'm currently just reading my face off.
Well, that's what I was trying to say I was trying to introduce it as opposite of the skills side, that your seminar is actually researching those you're learning.
I'm learning as I go, and
trying to stay a week or so ahead of the group.
A couple weeks, yeah.
Exactly, which is the same thing I did with all the leadership stuff that I've been teaching. So just in the last, we got another 5 minutes or so, but just to wrap up with what are some things that you're interested in personally, and then I'll finish up with what are some things you're interested in professionally.
Okay.
But just on the personal side, what are the things that are floating your boat these days? Things you're interested in.
So
you've got a little daughter.
I do. I have a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Are you interested in her?
I am. She's good at like all the things that I was never good at, like drawing.
Wow.
Playing piano. Like she's good at kind of creative things. I was not really like creative in sort of a visual way. I was more, theater, that kind of stuff. But she's really good at drawing things and making things. So yes, I'm very interested in her and watching her grow and develop. And her language. Is
it the biggest mirror in the world?
Speaks English, yeah.
Isn't it? Huh? I mean, that's what I went through as well.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, I'm interested in her. I do yoga.
Oh.
I've done that for a long time, but and then I've started doing some other, like I went for a run the other day, like when I was at the Biwaka Retreat Center. So, but in general, I mean, I don't know. I'm part of this group. We do 30-day challenges. A lot of them. Every month we pick a new one.
How many in the group?
Oh, there's like hundreds of us. It's an online group. Yeah. And I can now do like push-ups and like real push-ups, not like on my knees push-ups, like freaking push-up, burpees, things like that. So, yeah, I think that helps to regulate stress. And it's a good example for my daughter, and it's helped my yoga. It's made my yoga so much better. So that's been a huge plus.
What's made your yogas better is developing strength?
Yeah.
Okay.
I always had the flexibility, but I've really worked on strength, and that's been great. And I think that, is a good example for my daughter as well. She really likes doing like gymnastics, not for me. But she does karate now as well with her dad. And she loves doing like flips and stuff. And so, we kind of challenge each other, like, can you do this? Can you do that? And when I'm working out, sometimes she'll come over and, work out with me. So yeah, that's what I guess I'm into recently.
That's a bit, takes up between work and a 5-year-old. Your dance card is pretty full, isn't it?
Yeah, I keep myself pretty busy, but this is my current 30-day challenge. These are all the things that I do each day, kind of thing. But it's just gotten progressive. Like we do a different one, and then she's starting to try and do it with me as well, which is cool.
Okay, professionally, what are you interested in these days?
I've been reading a lot about Yutori Kyoiku and sort of the effects that that had, and then how.
So for the foreign audience, the Yutori Kyoiku, can you?
Yeah, it was this policy that commanded Japanese education for several years that basically cut the amount of content that students were learning. It cut the hours that they were learning. But unfortunately, it did not prepare the teachers enough. And it essentially, the unintended consequence of it was that student motivation went down. Of course, scores went down. It created bright flight where students were running to private schools. And so therefore class became even more apparent. It was just a real failure on several levels. So I've been reading a lot about that, and then sort of the knock-on effect of that. And then right now I'm combing through white papers and things on the Ministry of Education website, reading.
An exciting girl you are.
I know, I am.
Combing through the Ministry of Education's website.
Yes.
Wow.
Reading lots of stuff and looking at charts and just trying to make sense of it all. I've read quite a bit of Kariya Sensei, who was the reason that Yutori Kyoiku was basically nixed, because he's the one who just did the research to show, guys, this isn't working. And it's funny because the Japanese did it despite the fact that the United States and several other countries had done a similar thing and said, this doesn't work. And then Japan did it anyway. And didn't train the teachers on how to, support kids. Developing these, zest for life, etc. Well, at that time it wasn't called Zest for Life, but anyway, sorry, I'm getting off on a 10 p.m. tangent. I'm usually in bed by like 9 o'clock.
So am I. Well, not by 9, but yeah, this is bedtime now. So with that, we're going to wrap up. It's been a quick hour. It's been a lovely hour. I think I'm going to, just say thank you. And, thank you so much for coming in. Let's, we'll put Simon's microphone back on. Unmute audio. There he is. And Philip.
Thank you.
Hi, and Andy, anybody want to say thank you?
Thank you very much. Sorry, I muted myself for a little bit.
Yeah, he muted me, but that was really interesting, Kat. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you're welcome.
There was so much in there that we could have a 10-hour discussion.
Well, I'm pretty sure we could all together just spend a weekend talking and we still wouldn't cover everything.
That's right. But I really enjoyed the questions and the answers, and just it just makes you think about everything all the time.
Yeah
Definitely.
Listen, Simon, I got my eyes on you. If you want to, I try to go man woman each week. We've been doing this for a few months, and if you ever want to come into the hot seat and spend an hour answering everybody's questions, I think we got to see all these smiles around here right now. We'd love to have you come in and join us some evening.
One evening.
Yeah, okay. So I'll get a hold of you through Andrew. Yeah. And I'll let you know some dates that are up if you're into it. If not, please come anytime and sit in and join us as you did tonight. It was a real pleasure to have you here with us.
You're a very good interviewer, Steve.
Oh, well, I'm interested. Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, that's right. And
he's been practicing.
But Kat, thank you very much. It was very honest and very heartfelt, which is what Kat is, as we know.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
We all know and love you. So
thank you, Simon.
It's just beautiful to hear stuff from the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go brush your teeth and go to bed and get up. You got to do all this again tomorrow.
Yeah. No, tomorrow morning I wake up and I have yoga.
Oh, good for you.
Yoga, strength yoga is really good, because that that's the key point. The strength is the basic fundamental, not all this going to a studio crap.
No, I have a private teacher.
Oh,
Self-care. Self-care.
Self-care is good. Just before you go, I just wanted to check and see if anybody else had any last questions they wanted to hurl at you in the last couple of minutes.
Good point, Phil.
Have any questions?
Oh, Andy.
Andy, you're talking to your...
Andy, you look like you're talking to someone else.
I've got Itcher on the other
Yeah, I was wondering if it was
see.
Itcher for a second.
Looks like you just leaned down and said something to your plant.
Did she,
Lurker, Andy.
You have a question, Itcher?
is she on another device or has she shrunk?
She's on my iPad.
Hi.
Yay!
Yay.
I just got home.
She doesn't want to be shown, so I'm not
Oh,
showing.
that's fair enough. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Does she have a question?
You have a question?
Oh, like I said, I just got home. I didn't really see what's going on.
Okay, no questions there.
You want to say hi to everyone? Or
Can
you
I
don't
ask
want to?
a question?
Yeah.
Did anybody else have one of those brains when they were little? That
There you go.
wasn't typical.
Like everybody else?
Yeah. Did anybody else have? And how did your teachers kind of deal with that? I wonder if, yeah.
That's a very good question, Kat. It's the whole thing of difference.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically in school people are different, and having a teacher who understands difference.
Yeah,
That's
and some kids, their difference stands out more than others at different times. It's not so obvious.
Yeah, that's
Or some people learn to have kind of hide their difference.
Yep.
And other kids just don't.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The kind of
And
I just saw the Freddie Mercury film Bohemian Rhapsody on Sunday.
See that?
I mean, if you couldn't, difference is phenomenal in that film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Human beings and I think that's what, going back to what you said, Stephen, I mean, the whole thing of teaching is understanding that human beings in our room are different. And I think the skill of the teacher is how you deal with difference, not similarity. I mean, that's it. How a good teacher identifies a human being who needs a certain type of help and dealing with it, as Kat said. I understand that human being a little bit. I don't understand them totally, but understanding that person needs some attention in some way.
Yeah. And I think sometimes even if you don't necessarily understand them, you can still show understanding.
Yes.
I had a little boy who, I had 40 elementary school kids, but I had this one class, this little boy, he needed to be on my lap. He needed to have some kind of and he would get up and just walk out of the classroom. He was really, on another wavelength. And, but if you could just get him to be present, again, it's that idea of just being present. Every now and then he would come out with something and I'd be like, all right.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, there's that great story going back to the very beginning of your conversation. You were asking Kat about TED Talks. And the ultimate TED Talk we all know is the Sir Ken Robinson TED Talk.
Of course, right, yeah.
And of course, what does Ken say about Miss Katz? The whole thing of a human being walking into a room and then they're closing the door and the mother's outside and saying, hang on a minute, she's a dancer. And, she's the choreographer for Cats. I mean, that is the ultimate for me, that we have to realize the creativity in that person who's different and understand that just because they're not interested in what you're saying or interested in the pair or interested in the group, it doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to that human being.
No, doesn't mean they're stupid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, they're probably not stupid. They're actually probably very, very talented.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
difference needs to be celebrated. Yeah.
Well, this could go on for another hour. My son, who's 17, is going to New York tomorrow.
Oh, why?
All right, let's come round quick.
Yeah, he's going to Yale University for up to New Haven, Connecticut. It's an academic competition called the World Scholars Cup. And it's something that I knew nothing about, but it's sort of like an academic competition that came out of the States. And this young Russian-American guy won it a few years ago and started his own company. And it's about 10 years old. And it's just, there are over 600 teams going to this is the third and final round. And there have been something like 5,000 teams of 3 members each.
Gosh.
And they're down to the top 600 teams, of which my son is in. And they're going off for 10 days at Yale of debate, essay contest, all kinds of, look it up. There's a bunch of videos, World Scholars Cup, WSC.
Incredible.
And it's just all these young, relatively wacky kids, you know, who are kind of celebrating learning, celebrating, you know, academics and the international exchange that comes with it. So I promised him from 10 o'clock that I would give him the rest of my evening. So I'm going to wrap up there and say thank you very much. And we're on here every Tuesday night. We're also on Friday nights with Phil Brown here, who has a little bit of a different kind of forum, but equally as fun and meaningful. So check it out, or check it out on our website, itdi.pro. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and say thank you again, everybody. You've been a wonderful group.